Hi everyone, it's Alex from Risk Academy, and today I wanted to once again talk very briefly about Risk Management 1 versus Risk Management 2. And this is the concept that kind of been brewing in the discussion on LinkedIn for quite a while, and I wanted to finally crystallize it in a single video. So the interesting perspective that I have discovered over the years, over the 14 years I've been in risk, is that there are really three types of risk management per se. There's the legal risk management, that's all your safety, environmental, anti-money laundering, all the stuff that is required by law. So usually there's a prescribed way on how to manage risks required by law. And there is probably not a lot of leeway risk managers have in how to approach and quantify and analyze those risks, because usually there's a legislation or a guidance or a standard that pretty much spells out how it needs to be done. Most of the standards are pretty poor, but I guess we have to live with what we've got. So that's risk management 0. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily even consider it risk management. But that's not really to offend anyone who's spent their career in safety or quality or environmental stuff. It's just, for me, it's a different type of activity to the other risk management that I'll talk about. So that's risk management 0 essentially. Risk management 1 is what risk management has evolved to over the last 20 years, and that's doing risk appetite statements, risk reports, risk workshops, having risk owners, risk mitigation plans, and running risk committees, doing all the stuff that is typically considered risk management. Now the interesting challenge or the problem with this risk management 1 stuff is that it's usually enforced or encouraged by external parties. You would actually rarely have a CEO or a head of procurement or a CFO come to you as the risk manager and say, we need to run a risk committee because we can't make a decision on something. Or it's quite rare for them to come to you and say, do a heat map for this multi-billion-dollar decision because we can't make a decision before you do a heat map. So most of this stuff that we consider risk management actually came, if we actually chase it or trace it back to the origins, actually came from external influences. External world being the regulators, consultants, auditors, credit rating agencies, board members. All of these parties are external to the actual decision making in the company. So a lot of that stuff actually came from outside. And as time goes by, what we are discovering is that most of this stuff is completely artificial. A risk appetite statement, with or without it, it would actually have very little, if any, impact on the actual decision making, because the limits were always there, the board level policies were always there. So it's not like the executives and the board members were not able to make decisions before the risk appetite statements appeared. So most of that stuff is completely artificial. Contracts have been signed, multi-billion-dollar contracts have been signed even before we came up with heat maps and risk registers. And most of that stuff doesn't actually have a direct, immediate impact on the decision making. So that's risk management 1. And I like to call it risk management 1 is risk management for someone else, for an outside of the company, for someone who wants to see evidence of risk management, but either is not competent enough to understand what proper risk management is, or doesn't really want to get into too much detail to understand what's really happening. I mean, I had a wonderful example when we did 10,000 scenarios highlighting to one of the ministries in Russia, highlighting how would uncertainty impact on the liquidity of a multi-billion-dollar company, highlighting that there were some good years, there were some bad years, showing all sorts of really, really important risk issues, only for the ministry next year to come up and say, it's too complicated, we don't really want that much detail, give us a heat map instead. So most of that stuff, that risk management 1, is not very real because it comes from outside. It's very dumbed down, simplistic stuff, which has no chance of capturing the complexity of the way business operates. And more importantly, the executives themselves use risk management 1 to show kind of intent that they want to manage risks, but your heat maps, your risk registers, they would rarely, if ever, contain the full picture. And I'm not just saying the full picture of all the risks physically possible. That's, that is impossible, we know that. I'm saying that even the full picture of the known risks, all of those, risk management 1 type activities, they're usually cleansed, they're sugar-coated to show evidence that some sort of risk management is happening, but you wouldn't see really like life or death situations, issues listed in those documents. And then of course there's risk management 2. And risk management 2 is using risk management for the actual decision makers inside the company. So it's risk management 0, do risk management because it's a law. Risk management 1 is do risk management because someone else asked you to do something and they want to see something. And that usually is a very simplistic, dumbed down, cleansed version of the risk analysis. And then risk management 2 is we need full analysis to actually be able to make that multi-billion-dollar decision. We need the calculations, the scenarios. We need to see how different hypotheses work out. We need to test and validate the assumptions. We need to quantify different scenarios to bring to the decision makers and say, well, these are the range of possible outcomes. These are the key factors. This is the tornado diagram. These are the key factors, key assumptions that impact your decision. And this is the likelihood of achieving and exceeding your set objectives given the assumptions that you've made. So risk management 2 is for the actual decision makers. Now, why am I shooting this video? Is because risk management 0 and risk management 1 have a lot of similarities in their approach, in the methodologies, in the frequency, in the skill set required from the risk manager. These two things have nothing to do with risk management 2. Risk management 2 is different skill set, different tools, different techniques, different software, even different software, completely different software. The software that you use for your risk report generating, risk register heat map generating is unfit to provide proper risk analysis for the decision makers. So there's a vast difference between risk management 0.1 and risk management 2. And why am I saying that is that as the risk manager, especially of a large corporation, I mean, hopefully you are lucky that you have people looking after specific legal type risk activities, but the chances are risk management 1 and risk management 2 will usually fall into your lap. And it is a very important decision that every risk manager has to make. How much time are you going to allocate to risk management 1 versus risk management 2? And historically, I mean, I've traveled quite a bit, and I've met hundreds, without exaggeration, hundreds of risk managers, only to discover that they spend 80 to 90% of risk management 1 on risk management 1 instead of helping the actual decision makers. You know, the guys who actually pay their salaries, which is bizarre. And that's why one of the challenge, I think that's one of the reasons why risk management is kind of still trying to prove its relevance. You know, once you do risk management 2, there's no proof required. The relevance of risk management is so blindly obvious. I mean, we helped save the whole solar generation industry in Russia by using proper risk analysis. You know, once you do that, once you see, you know, the impact of the risk analysis that you do, nobody really questions, well, do we still need risk management? Do we don't need risk management after that? So it's a very important choice that risk managers all over the world have to make. Where are you going to spend the bulk of your time? And my personal advice, and this is what I have been doing in my career as the head of risk of one of the sovereign funds, is I would spend 10% on risk management 1, because it still has to be done. It's not going to go away anywhere. You know, credit rating agencies and external auditors are still going to continue asking stupid questions, and regulators, especially in Russia, they're just completely beyond help. The 10% is more than enough to generate anything you can think of. Risk owners, heat maps, registers, risk reports, mitigation plans, all of this stuff. Once you realize all of this stuff is not real, it actually takes minutes to generate all of that, and you free up so much time to spend on the actual decision making, to integrate into decision making, use proper Monte Carlo simulation, proper scenarios, proper decision trees to help the decision makers do their job better and be appreciated for that. So this is a challenge to all the risk managers. Accept that there are two different things. They're never going to connect, unfortunately, or at least not in the foreseeable future, and you do have to make a choice. Where are you going to allocate the most of your time? Good luck with that decision. It will shape your career.